Okay, by now everyone would have seen and heard that the 2019-2020 state budget has been handed down. Many of you probably a little bit confused about the details of what's in the budget, what's been funded and what's not. So we're just going to go through a quick exercise in understanding the state budget, also having a bit of a deep dive into the state budget, looking at what's been funded and what more importantly, the three things that we identified which could be improved upon, and also a heads up about our detailed analysis of the state budget. First of all, let's go and have a look at the state budget in detail. When people go to the state budget lockup, they are presented with a whole pack of information. And I'll put them on here on the table just so that you understand where they all are. I'll go through the easy stuff first. In there's the Treasurer's speech. It is exactly what it is. It's a speech delivered by the Treasurer to the Parliament at 1 p.m. on budget day. I don't tend to read that because that's essentially what the rest of the papers will be about. So I'll usually put that to one side. For the first time, the government has put out a gender equality budget statement. I think it's a great measure because it does detail how some of the budget measures align with the government's gender equality strategy. It is a great overview, but the numbers and actions are still in the rest of the budget pack here. So again, I'll put that to one side again. Then there are a whole heap of media releases, which are media releases by the various ministers and parliamentary secretaries pertaining to their portfolio on everything from Royal Commission to mental health, right through to public housing for Victorians. They are great to get media stories and news outlets, not useful for our purpose here today. So I'm setting all of those to one side. The next section are the budget overviews, and I found this quite useful just as an initial glance to understanding where the budget is heading. And they are having three booklets. The first one is an overview. As its name suggests, it is an overview of the budget, and it contains all the promises that the government has made in terms of capital expenditure on road and rail, for example, on the various things they're going to do in terms of schools, hospitals. Provides more information than what the speech is and what the media releases contain, but not as much as the rest of the information contains. So good overview, but not useful from a detailed analysis perspective. Similarly, there are two additional overviews, one for regional Victorians and one for suburban Victorians. Again, further detail, but not a great amount of detail. So again, setting them on one side. Now comes perhaps a more boring part, as many of you probably gather. The first part is what they call the statement of finances. And I compare this to council's revenue, expenditure, cash flow, and balance sheets. It tells you a great detail about how the state government obtains money from various revenue sources, how you intend to spend those money, and what the overall cash surplus and so forth will be like. Great if you're into the numbers game. Probably a bit too detailed for us for our consideration in terms of budget analysis. Put it to one side. There's also a small book called Strategy and Outlook, and I compare this to the Council's Strategic Resource Plan, or the SRP. It looks at things like the various economic growth outlook and how that impacts on states' revenues and expenditure, our rating system, how we're being rated, and in terms of economy and so forth. You use that as a basis for modeling in terms of how we project economic growth is going to head. Again, useful if you're an economist, but for most of us, it's probably not that exciting. What we do focus on are two major pieces of information. The first is what they call the State Capital Program, and this is the equivalent to the Council's Capital Works Program. It tells the readers what gets done by when, and it goes down year by year in terms of how much is projected to be spent in year one, how much is expended in year two, and so on and so on. And people can keep track as to how the progress of each of the capital works projects are heading. Again, fantastic piece of information. It will be is useful as a supplementary piece of information to what I'm about to show you next. So what I'm showing you next is probably the what I consider the most important part of the budget papers. And as you can see, we've read it and tabbed various initiatives that impacts on the local government sector. This is called the Service Delivery Book, and it is quite a thick book, and it details all the services and project outputs that the government has chosen to spend our taxes on. And it broken down by various departments, so Department of Infrastructure, or Department of Transport, Department of Environment, Land, Water and Planning, Department of Justice, and so on, so on, so on. And each department outlines a series of measures, usually over 4 years, but sometimes over 1 or 2 years, about what they intend to do. And if I can just flip to one of the tabbed pages, you'll see here that it is broken down by the initiative and the year that they will spend on, and where possible, they'll put down the total estimated investment on this right-hand column here. So that gives you a great overview about what will be spent. How they will spend it is detailed in the Capital Works program. So when we look at the state budget, we tend to ignore 80% of what's out there. We focus on the 20%, which is a really, really important part about what services and projects will be delivered and how they're going to deliver it and by when. So that provides you a very good overview of the state budget papers. And we're now going to examine the budget in a bit more detail and look at what the good news stories are and some of the things that may have escaped your attention.